Today we want to look at the studio cameras that we're going to be using. Want to talk about what you need to do as a cameraman, what your job responsibility is, so when you are picked as a cameraman to come in the studio, you'll know exactly what you have to do. The first thing you're going to do is you have to go over to the wall. You have to turn on the light switches. I made it real easy because I marked the switches with a little star, piece of tape. So every switch that you see, you'll need to flip that switch up so you have lights on in the studio. So just try to get in the habit of that when you walk in the TV studio as a cameraman. Make sure that you turn on our studio lights. Now let's take a look at the camera and what we need to do with our little Canon cameras in order to get them set up, get them turned on, get them white balanced, how to adjust the white balance. Also, we want to talk about the tripod. Once again, you have three controls. You have pedestal, you have pan, you have tilt controls on the tripod. But once we get the camera on, we need to white balance the camera, and then we need to manually set the exposure. So we want to cover those items. So I'm just going to come in to show you a close-up of the camera and what we need to do in order to set those different functions for the camera. Over on the wall beside the office, we have a series of light switches that you'll need to turn on. Once again, we're not going to go in a lot of detail. If you'll just look for everything that has a star on it, and we want to turn those lights on. I believe there's about 6 or 7 switches. So everything that has a star marked, turn those on. That's going to turn our studio lights on. This is a Canon GL2 camera that we use as a studio camera. All we're doing is we're taking the video signal out of the camera through the cable. We're sending it back to the control room. We're not using it as a camcorder. We're not going to be putting tape into the camera. We're strictly using it as a video camera. The first thing that we need to do is to turn the camera on. If you will reach up to the very top, over on the left-hand side, you'll find a little button that you'll push the button down and push it forward. This is going to turn the camera on. You will hear a slight beep. If you pushed it backwards, it actually places it in the VCR mode. If you need to tilt the camera down to look at those settings, you can do that. But it's located on the top of the camera. Once you get used to it, all you have to do is push it forward. You'll hear a little beep, and then you're going to open up the door to the monitor, and you'll be able to see everything on the monitor that you're going to need to look at in order to get all your settings correct. If for some reason you turn the camera on and you do not notice that you have a signal in your monitor, it's very possible that the switch located over on the right side of the camera in the back is turned over to lock. Basically, this locks the camera down where you cannot operate it. What you need to do is you need to have that up on standby. Most of the time you'll find the camera will be in the standby mode, but it could get turned off. If for some reason you find out you do not have any signal going to your monitor, you can't see anything, just check that to make sure that it's not on lock, it's over on the standby mode. If you still do not have a signal, you might start checking to see if you have AC power, if all your cables are connected properly. But as long as it's on standby and as long as you turn it to the camera mode, not VCR, you should be able to see an image in your little monitor. Over on the left side of our camera, you're going to notice 3 different controls that you're going to be working with. This area right here, this is white balance, and you will have 2 different buttons that you're working with, select and actually the white balance button, and you will notice the little symbol. It's basically an international symbol that most camera manufacturers use to represent white balance. We will also be talking about a 3rd control. This is your iris or exposure control. We're talking about exposure, how light, how dark the image is, and we want to put that in the manual mode so we'll be able to control it. But let's first look at white balance. As I mentioned the other day, what you will need to do is you'll need to go in and first we want to select white balance. We want to put it in the manual mode and we need to select that. And we're going to do that by pushing in on the select button. Once we have pushed in on that select button, you'll notice in your monitor, you'll notice that little symbol. That is your white balance symbol. That's what you're looking for. If I push on that select button, you'll notice as it changes to basically looks like a little light bulb. If we push it again, it changes to the sun. If we push it again, you see nothing. Basically, we're in the automatic mode. If we push it again, then we're back to that symbol. That's what we're looking for. So you want to push the select button until you see that symbol in the monitor. Next, what we need to do is we're going to basically bring up an image that is white. We have to have a white card. It has to be placed under the lights in order to tell the camera that this particular color is white. So let's get that card out to do that. We usually have one of these white cards laying over in the studio at the side. So you want to find that white card. It needs to be placed up by the news desk or in front of the news desk, or you could have one of the 3 cameramen. Somebody could hold that up. It has to be in the light source. That means we want the studio lights that you turned on, we want it hitting that white. And then what you want to do is you want to take your camera, you want to zoom all the way in. You want to zoom all the way in until your screen is nothing but white. You want to fill up the entire screen with white. Once we have it in that position, now we will be ready to white balance. You will notice that the screen is totally filled up with the white card. We have our little white balance symbol on. The next thing you want to do is you want to reach and you want to push down the little button that has the symbol of white balance and watch the little symbol in the screen. It's going to go blink, blink, blink. I'm holding it down. It's blinking. Takes about 2 or 3 seconds. And then when it stops blinking, then you can take your finger off. So all you have to do is fill the entire screen up with the white card. Make sure that that symbol is on. That basically means we have placed it in the white balance mode, so we can manually do that. Then you want to take and place your finger right underneath, push, and hold down the button for about 3 seconds, and you'll see it blink. When it stops blinking, that camera is white balanced. Make sure that all 3 cameras are white balanced. We are telling the camera that the color that we're shooting is white. If we do that, all the other colors are going to fall into place. So when we switch from camera 1 to 2 to 3, we're not going to notice much of a difference in color. Especially with the equipment we have, it will not be perfect, but it's going to be close. You are now white balanced. The next thing we have to do is we have to set the exposure or the iris on the camera. In order to set the exposure, we're going to go back to the left-hand side of the camera. We're going to look to the very front of the camera, right where it says EXP for exposure. You'll notice a small little wheel that has notches on it. It does 2 things. First of all, if we push it straight in, it turns it on to manual exposure. If we push it in again, you'll feel it's kind of spring-loaded. If you push it in again, it turns it off. If we push it in again, it turns it back on. So we first have to turn on the exposure. Once we turn it on, and that you're going to notice that your screen is going to look different. Now if you look at your screen, you're going to see this white bar at the top, and it's going to say E-lock. If I push that exposure button in again, I turned it off. You'll see it disappears. If I push it straight in again, this will appear, the little white line, and it says E-lock. Right now it's at plus or minus 0. If I need to make my image lighter, that we want to change the exposure, if I push up on that little wheel, not straight in, but if I push up and let go of it, you'll see it changes to +1. The image gets brighter. If I push it up again, it goes to E2. It gets brighter. If it's too bright, we push it down, let go of it. It goes back to 1, goes to 0. I'm pushing down. If you want to think of down as darker, going up as lighter. If I want to make it darker, it goes from -1 down to -2. Now what we are looking at is we're looking at faces. We do not care about the outfit that the person's wearing. We want to look at the mask of the face. We're trying to get good exposure on their face. You're trying to get flesh tones. We don't want the person to be real white, washed out. We don't want them to be too dark. We're trying to get good flesh tones in their face. And by pointing the camera at their face and having the E-lock on, that means we want to lock down the exposure. We don't want it to automatically change back and forth. We can keep bringing this up or bringing it down until we have some nice flesh tones in their face. Once you think it looks good, we're going to stop there. You might need to change it, but we're going to wait to hear from the technical director. The TD is going to be looking at the program monitor, and they will tell you, camera 3, it looks a little bright, you need to iris down, so take it down a notch. They're looking at it on a big monitor with good glass instead of this little plastic screen. So we go by what the technical director says. They're looking at it, they're making that judgment call. And when they tell you it looks good, we're going to leave it right there. You want this to be in there the entire time. You want it to say E-lock. Don't turn it off. If you turn it off, it goes back to automatic. You want to have that white balance symbol in there the entire time because we white balance the camera. You do not want to turn that off. So this is what it should look like. Don't worry about other little symbols like it has like a little tape and a diagonal line going through it. It means we do not have a tape in the camera. Doesn't matter. We're not taping with the camera. We're strictly using this as a video camera in this mode to send a video signal back to the control room. But those are the adjustments that you need to make. First, you have to do white balance, then you have to do exposure lock. You can't do them in the reverse order. Right now, I cannot white balance the camera if the exposure lock is on. So you have to do them in that particular order. Those are our controls that we need in order to set up the camera properly. We have white balance, and then we have the exposure control. You want to see those symbols in your little monitor the entire time. If you don't see them there, it's not right. We want to put them on the manual mode so we can control it. So we want to control what's going on. We don't want the camera to do it automatically. The camera doesn't know what's important. We have to tell the camera what's important. So we want to control the white balance and we want to control the exposure. So we're going to make those adjustments. Now, you have to do them in that order. You have to do white balance first, then you go ahead and set your exposure and do it to the best of your ability, and you'll have your headset on before we begin. The technical director will talk with you. They will tell you camera 3, camera 2, need to iris up, iris down. Make those adjustments. The technical director will have the final call. They will make the decision whether it needs to be lighter or darker. Remember, you just have a little plastic screen back here. It's not nearly as accurate as the television monitor that the technical director is working with back in the control room. However, like I said, white balance first, then exposure lock. If you tried it in the reverse order, it won't work. If you did your exposure lock first, you will not be able to white balance. It won't work. It won't work, so you have to do them in that specific order. So we want to set the camera up. Like I said, you come into the studio, first thing you do, turn on the lights. Probably the next thing, you could go up, put the card up so you can have a card. Has to be in the light has to be hitting it, and this gives us a white card so we can start going to do the white balance. We do the white balance on the camera. Once we're done with that, then you could go ahead and set the exposure lock. You really need to have somebody sitting at the news desk or standing in front because we have to go by flesh tones. We're trying to get some tone in their face. We do not want them washed out. So we have to do that. And then once we have that, you talk to your technical director. They'll tell you if it's okay or not. And then basically you're all set up for the camera. Let's talk about a couple other things. If you're not familiar with the controls on the tripod, let me show you the controls on the tripod, and we'll talk briefly about the intercom system. If you take a look at your tripod, we have the tripod head, and we have a couple controls. Remember, all the tripods, you always have control over the pan, the tilt, and also to be able to pedestal. On the tripod head, the particular heads that we have in the studio, the very back end, there's a little knob back here that if you turn that, you'll be able to pan the camera left to right. We have one over here on this side, and this is your tilt control. Once again, if we loosen it up, we're going to be able to tilt the camera up and down. We turn it back, it's going to lock down the tilt. So you have those two controls located, up on the tripod head for your tilt and your pan. Once you get your shot, if you're not going to have to move it at all, you can lock them down. Otherwise, in that you want to set it up so you might be able to pan or tilt. It depends on the type of show, that you're doing. But those are your controls for the pan and the tilt. Let's take a look at the pedestal. Located just above the tripod legs, we have the pedestal control. First of all, what you have to do, we have a knob. You need to loosen up that knob. We'll be turning it to the left. We'll be turning counterclockwise. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. Turn it to the left. It's going to loosen that up. And then we have a crank over on this side that if we turn it, we can pedestal the camera up. That means straight up, or we can turn it straight down. We get the camera to the height that we need it. Once you have it to the height, be sure to lock it down. Just tighten that up just enough so it's not going to move. Likewise, make sure before you start turning this, it's unlocked. You could actually strip this out if this is locked down and you're trying to crank this. It should be very easy to crank, so just make sure you loosen it. This will crank up, and then once you get it to the height, just kind of snug it down. And this will give you your pedestal control on the camera tripod. The last item we want to talk about is your intercom system, your headset, and the power pack. You'll notice hanging over on the camera, we have our power pack, and in order to get this to operate, for you to be able to hear the technical director and talk with them, you have to push the button that says talk, and then a little light will come on. If the little light is on, then you know that the power pack is working properly. Also, over on the one side of the power pack, you have a potentiometer, basically a little control for volume. This controls the volume of the headset. Has nothing to do with the mouthpiece and talking and controlling that volume. It's strictly the headset. So if the technical director is talking, it's too loud in your headset, you can turn them down. Not loud enough, you can turn them up. But make sure it's on. A lot of times people think it's not working. The light is on and they can't hear anything. Well, maybe it's turned completely off. So adjust this and you'll be able to hear your technical director. If there is a problem and the light doesn't come on or you can't hear, that's the time that you need to see me, and that because there could be a possible issue with that. And then you can put your headset on and you'll be able to communicate with the control room. Now you should have a pretty good idea of what you need to do if you're a cameraman and what your job responsibilities are. Once you have had a chance to practice, you just need to do the same thing over and over again. Try to develop habits. Come in the studio, make sure the studio lights are on, grab your white balance card, put it up front, and then you can go through the procedures we talked about as far as setting up your white balance on the camera, setting your exposure control, and then make sure that you also know about how to adjust your tripod, know where your pan control is, know where your tilt control, pedestal, how do you pedestal the camera up and down, and also the headset. Make sure that you know how to put the headset on, how to turn it on, how to adjust the volume. Once the production is ready to begin, you need to be standing behind your camera, not sitting down, have the headset on, listen to the technical director. They're going to be on the headset with you, and they're going to tell you what they need. But at least you know what you're supposed to do as far as setting up the camera. Hopefully this will help you out a little bit.